Hi, I'm Friederike Ernst. I'm one of the founders of Gnosis, and I'm here to talk to you about Gnosis Chain today. And I'm super happy to be here because not only am I a Web3 founder, I'm also a retired scientist. So in my previous career, I was a research scientist and actually ended up leaving science to co-found Gnosis. So, who here has heard of Gnosis before? Okay, so, that's actually quite a lot of you. Fantastic. So, Gnosis has been around by Web3 standards a very long time. So basically as a project since 2015 and as its own company since 2017. And we've kind of churned out a series of products, some of which gained very significant adoption in the Web3 space. And about a year and a half or 2 years ago, we decided that it was now time to focus on scalability, because it became clear that lots of applications were going to be priced out of Ethereum, and this is exactly what happened. And while block space may become commoditized to a certain extent, our premise is that truly decentralized block space will not. So this is where we're at. So truly decentralized blockchain space is what we're trying to offer. So Gnosis Chain actually started as DeSci Chain in 2018 and had nothing to do with Gnosis at the time. It had a proof of authority consensus mechanism, which means there were like 20 validators who got to build blocks. And it has a dual token model with a staking token, which was aptly named Stake. This shows you how early DeSci Chain was in the game. Its chain ID is 100, so it truly is one of the OGs. And the year before last, I was going to say last year, but it's now 2023. I still have to get used to that. So in 2021, the DeSci and Gnosis communities started talking about a so-called token merger, which then actually went through. So the stake token holders received GNO from the GnosisDAO treasury, and the staking token to the then renamed Gnosis chain became the Gnosis token. At the same time, we launched the Gnosis Beacon chain because, as I said, we do believe that decentralized block space is going to be a scarce resource also in the future. And having by all intents and purposes a consortium blockchain with 20 validators that you know the identity of, this isn't what we were here for. So we launched a beacon chain to run along with the then Gnosis chain. And we did our very best to make staking so easy that people would do it from their home computers. And we were actually pretty successful. So basically at the time that our merge happened, we already had 100,000 validators on Gnosis chain. That's a quarter of what Ethereum has. Now we also have a trustless bridge to Ethereum, and we still have much lower fees. So this is Gnosis chain. Why should DeSci build on Gnosis chain? Well, there's very practical reasons to build on Gnosis chain. So as I said, it is completely compatible with Ethereum. It's got trustless bridges. So while basically in terms of trustlessness and decentralization, Ethereum really is the gold standard. Gnosis is not that far off, but it kind of offers this at a much lower cost. So basically, if you think of DAOs, for instance, DAOs rely on on-chain transactions kind of coming through all the time because that's how the organization runs. And obviously, this has become unfeasible on many blockchains. And on Gnosis chain, this very much is something that happens and should happen. There's 1,500 plus DAOs on Gnosis chain, including some from the DeSci community, like the Vita DAO and Lab DAO are built on Gnosis chain. Gnosis chain has extensive DAO tooling. So basically, if you look at the things you can do, basically the toolkits you can use directly on Gnosis chain, it's really basically, if you have a DAO, this is where you should want to run it. And you also have cross-chain execution of governance decisions. So basically you can have like part of your decision process or your entire decision process as an organization on Gnosis chain, but still have it effect changes on Ethereum mainnet or any other EVM chain that you so choose. Those are like the very practical reasons to actually launch your DeSci product or DAO on Gnosis chain. There's also more covert reasons that I actually want to talk about mainly in this talk. And this is, I am having the same problem as Andre now. That is credible neutrality. Who of you has heard the term credible neutrality in the past? Okay, this is, okay, like a fair share. So what credibly neutral systems have as their core tenet is that everyone who participates in them is by default has the same rights. And obviously, this is important for DeSci applications for several reasons. So one of those is just reputation, right? So basically, science in the real world, I'm gonna replace real world here by legacy world, was very much backed by nation states and universities and research institutes and so on. So basically, if you're a DeSci startup, you somehow need to demonstrate that you are to be taken seriously and that you're not someone's private plaything, right? So demonstrating credible neutrality, especially in times where we see factfulness becoming less and less important, and basically core institutions, trust in core institutions being eroded, I think basically having trustless platforms really is super important. It's also really important to eliminate platform risk. So basically, if you're on a blockchain that is run by a number of well-known parties, you have several risks. So for instance, if you think back of, you guys remember Facebook, right? And Facebook games, and basically it was a huge industry to kind of build your game on Facebook. But if you became too successful, you were deplatformed by Facebook because it was their platform, right? So for a platform to truly be a platform, it needs to belong to no one in particular, so that it can belong to everyone. So eliminating platform risk, super important, and credible neutrality or credibly neutral platforms help you do that. So in a proof of stake system, the node, a validator is a node, which is responsible for storing data, processing the transactions of the chain, and adding new blocks to the blockchain. And basically, if external forces have any say in which blocks get included, or which blocks do not get, which transactions do not get included, this system is no longer credibly neutral. And this may not just be like from a business rationale, it could also be a jurisdictional thing. So for instance, if all your validators are in the States or in the UK or wherever, it's probably not a great thing. Same thing, if all your validators actually run their nodes in the cloud in the same services, probably also not a great thing, right? So basically, if you have 1,000 validators, but 800 of them actually use Amazon Web Services as their infrastructure provider, you're actually drastically reducing the resilience of your network. So we at Gnosis Chain, we have kind of bet our future as a chain on the fact that a geographically diverse community of at-home node runners is super interesting and important to kind of have a resilient network. That means basically if anything happens in any of these jurisdictions or on any one of the cloud providers, it doesn't matter because it's always just a fairly small subset of the network. So this is actually the current distribution of Gnosis validators. We're about to launch, we have validators in 56 or so countries. We're about to launch an initiative that will reward spinning up nodes in countries where there is no validator yet. We're aiming to get to 100. I mean, obviously at some point there's a thing such as sufficient decentralization, but yeah, this is kind of part of the part of that mission to kind of have one validator, maybe not in every country of the world, but maybe like at least in 100 countries, right? So where are we at now? As I said, we try to make it really easy for people to kind of stake at home from, not quite from a Raspberry Pi, but from a machine that they have somewhere still in a back office that they can use to run a Gnosis node. We try to make it as easy as possible to kind of install that software. There's still a little bit of a way to go. We have tons of people who are non-technical actually running nodes and they set them up themselves and so on. Probably takes about a half an hour to an hour. We're trying to get somewhere where you can ideally just stake from your browser. So you open a browser window and you're part of the network. The minimum stake on Ethereum is 32 ETH. That is a very significant amount of money. On Gnosis, you need 1 GNO, which is currently just over $100 US. We have lenient uptime requirements. So basically, if your node goes offline, you're not slashed. I mean, you are slashed a little bit, but not significantly. So it's even if your node is only up like 80% of the time, you'll still turn a profit. Current APYs are around 15 or 16%. And we also have a collaboration with DAppNode and Avado, which are basically just sellers of hardware that sell you little boxes that you plug into your plug at home. And they're plug and play. So you can actually run a number of validators on them. They actually come with, you can just download the packages from the website or the interface and run them seamlessly at home. You also see that in terms of numbers of validators, Gnosis is only second to Ethereum at the moment and offers a credibly neutral experience. The next thing is Trustless Bridges, right? So now you have your assets on Gnosis. How do you get them off Gnosis if you want them somewhere else? So there always the choke point is the bridge, right? So basically who controls the bridge? And if you've been following the Web3 ecosystem over the past year and a half or so, you've probably read about the numerous bridge hacks that we've had. So basically what Gnosis has done is we have funded the research for the first CK light client bridge. So basically what that means is the tricky thing about bridging assets is your chain A needs to know what the state of the chain B is. So kind of you know whether the tokens that you're sending across have been received and cannot be received several times, or that they're actually that they were actually sent from the chain, right? So basically you kind of need to have an understanding of the state of the other chain. The way that we go, so in principle, you can do that with a light client. So basically that's kind of a client that checks the state and confirms whether something is in the current state of the blockchain. In principle, you can run those on blockchains. It's just incredibly expensive in terms of gas. So while you might, I mean, it's a stretch, but while you might be able to afford to run an Ethereum node on Gnosis chain, running a Gnosis chain node on Ethereum totally defeats the purpose of having low fees. So what we have done is actually we've taken this this light client and kind of rolled it up into a ZK circuit, and the ZK circuit then runs on both Gnosis chain and Ethereum mainnet, allowing these chains to kind of always know the state of the other network and bridge assets trustlessly. So basically, it's kind of a trust model of trustlessly connected layer ones. Yeah. So this is currently this bridge is live, and there's still bridges that are not of that architecture on Gnosis chain, but they will be updated in time as well. So if you look at what's going to be new for Gnosis chain this year. So last year we had the merge. So basically we saw that huge upgrade from a validator set of 20 to a validator set of 100,000. What we are working on this year is account abstraction. To how many of you does account abstraction mean anything? Okay, small minority. So how many of you have ever set up a wallet? Okay, almost everyone. So basically, you know the experience. You start the wallet. It tells you these are your 12 words. Never show them to anyone. Never lose them, or all your funds are going to be gone. Right? Terrible onboarding experience. And I mean, you guys are tech savvy. I mean, if you want to roll this out to normies, if you want to bring this technology that enables like trustless collaboration to the larger masses, this is an unacceptable onboarding experience. So really what you need is something like sign on with your email and someone custodies your keys for you, and basically but you should be able to retrieve them at any time and kind of rotate them out for new keys. So basically what account abstraction at a technical level does is it kind of it changes the nature of the wallet that you have on Ethereum from an externally owned address to a multi-sig wallet where you can rotate out the keys that actually sign for that wallet as and when you need. So basically people can guardian keys for use. You can have, parts of keys guardianed by different institutions. You can have things like social recovery. So basically, if you say these 10 people are my friend, if 8 of them agree that this is really me and I've lost my keys, I want to be able to recuperate my account, then you can now implement that natively. So this is the first thing, kind of upgrading the usability of the network to kind of not exclude the 95% of people worldwide who are not comfortable. Who are not comfortable with kind of storing their seed phrase somewhere safe. And the second thing is privacy. So as you know, privacy is a huge gap in blockchain technology. Lots of things are out there in the open. We have a fully specified design for a shutterized beacon chain, which kind of enables you to tap into protocol level privacy that we will roll out this year as well. And the third thing is segmented block space. So when new blockchains talk to you and say, come to our chain because we're wonderful for whatever reasons, they usually say it's because we have low fees. This is always true. But what then happens is if those chains become very popular, these fees are no longer low. They become high, and lots of people who were there from the get-go, because the fees were so low, are priced out. So basically what we are experimenting with is a design for segmented block space. That means that basically if you hold some of the Gnosis tokens, so if you're a part owner of the chain, there should always be a reserved space for you on every block where the regular fee market does not apply. So basically, if you're early and you hold GNO, you know that you'll never be priced out. It'll be like kind of buying real estate in downtown New York in the 70s or something. So you know you can live in that apartment forever. Could also sell it for an enormous upside, hopefully. But if you know you have that real estate, you can live on that chain for as long as your application lives. Cool. Thank you, guys. Where to find out more? Here, obligatory links, so gnosis.io. Everything else is also linked on gnosis.io. And thank you so much for your attention and staying here despite the fact that I am literally the only thing standing between you and lunch.
Okay, maybe just one quick question. If there is one before lunch, down here, yes, please, there's a box behind you.
Okay, it's not on yet. Oh, there we go. Cool. Thanks for your talk. I've got a number of questions, but I'll ask the most pressing one. You mentioned Ethereum and credible neutrality. Could you speak to the whole OFAC situation? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who's aware of the OFAC situation on Ethereum. Okay, so quite a few of you. So basically what Ethereum did, this is going to be a bit of a longer answer. I hope you don't kill me. So basically what happened on Ethereum is that there's a thing called proposer builder separation. And that basically means the process by which blocks are built is actually de facto split in two. Why was this done? It was done to kind of counteract centralizing forces. So basically, as we all know, proof of work, which we had until the merge, this was a huge factor for centralization because kind of running server farms is basically has huge economies of scale. So basically, there were a few large proof of work providers de facto who were kind of running the chain. One of the ideas of proof of stake was that proof of stake should not have these economies of scale. Turn out proof of stake has these economies of scale still, they're just smaller. And the reason why it has these economies of scale is because you can actually, there's a way to kind of extract additional fees from every block. We call them MEV. That stands for minor extractable value. And the MEV can be, it comes by reordering transactions because you as the block builder can kind of propose, you can say which transactions should go in which order. So basically, and you can also insert your own transactions to kind of front run orders into those. So to kind of to make sure that to actually do that, to order them appropriately and insert your own transactions, you actually need to run really sophisticated software that kind of calculates on the fly which one is the best order and which transactions to insert for you to actually extract the maximal value out of that block. So what actually happened is there was a company called Flashbots who actually built software and kind of gave it to people to run. That meant that they didn't actually have to write the software, and they would just then send the blocks onto someone who would actually build it. So this actually meant that almost everyone actually used the Flashbots MEV, MEV guess, I think it was called, software. So Flashbots is based in the US, and there was an OFAC sanctions thing coming out against a on-chain mixer called Tornado Cash last year. And what Flashbots actually started to do is to censor transactions that were touching on addresses that had previously interacted with Tornado Cash, which actually happened to be quite a few. These transactions were then not included in blocks that were built by people running with the Flashbots software, which they were doing because it was much more lucrative than just running the vanilla software. So that actually ended up in a situation where like 80% of blocks actually ended up being censored. I told you, sorry, ended up being censored. So part of the problem here is that there's no social consensus about the fact whether validators should have an opinion or whether they should just be mechanistic things building the blocks, right? So as long as you take in principle, if you have the freedom to kind of read the transactions, you should be allowed to kind of screen which ones go in and out. At least we have no social consensus otherwise. What you can actually do is you can technologically enforce this. You can actually force people or encourage people to cryptographically encode their transactions before they submit them, and then only reveal them after they have already been committed to the block. This is the Shutterized beacon chain specification that I talked about that we'll implement this year on Gnosis chain. Meanwhile, we have also launched a relayer on mainnet called get back to you on that. Agnostic relay. You can find it on GitHub. That actually runs the exact flashbot code, but it does not censor transactions. So basically, if you want to extract the additional values in that block, which I don't think you should be allowed to, but doesn't matter. In principle, you can, so you can run that software. But you can do it without actually censoring transactions that many validators are currently censoring. Sorry, I warned you. Does this answer your question?
Does it answer your question? Right, okay, there's no more time for questions, but I'm sure you can find Friederike later if you want to ask her anything. Thank you so much. It's time for lunch now.